So today's video is all about Andor, and before we dive into the main topic, we do have a bit of news. Diego Luna has confirmed he only has a week left to film on Season 2. This is fantastic. He goes on to say, "Tomorrow I fly back, and then we're finishing this." Season 2 comes out in 2025, and today we're gonna do a deep dive into what we can expect. Let's go. By 0 BBY, by the time of Rogue One and A New Hope, the Rebel Alliance had adopted the old Jedi saying, "May the Force be with you." We heard it across the original trilogy and the 2016 movie, often by non-Force users, such as General Dodonna, Radus, and a handful of others as well. So why would they use this phrase if they weren't affiliated with the Jedi Order of old? Before Rogue One came along, many original trilogy fans assumed it was due to Luke's arrival, but in fact, they'd been using the phrase years before the Battle of Yavin. So here's the thing, my dear friends. There is an answer that is simplistic that I'm going to start with based on assumptions from what we know in canon, in Star Wars Rebels, in the comics, in novelizations. But then I want to take a different approach, a different sort of theory that connects to Andor Season 2. It's going to be a fun video, stay tuned. So to begin with the simplistic answer, Jedi were involved in a direct and indirect way from the beginning of the early Rebel movement. Ahsoka Tano as Fulcrum is very important during this time, as is the Ghost Crew, who were part of Mon Mothma's defection from the Senate, especially the involvement of Kanan Jarrus and Ezra Bridger, and in a less direct way from afar, Obi-Wan Kenobi, friends with Bail Organa. Jedi were deeply connected to the rebellion's roots. So that is the simple answer, but now it's time for a different perspective. Considering Andor doesn't seem to want to acknowledge Star Wars Rebels, let's take a look from Tony Gilroy's point of view. And as you're going to see, my dear friends, the answer is more complicated than it might appear at first glance. So just to go back a bit, during the prequel trilogy and just after Order 66 as well, the phrase was adopted by non-Jedi as a means of conveying good luck and hope. It was especially prevalent amongst citizens and groups who held anti-imperial sentiments after Order 66 in the early imperial reign, as a show of the ongoing struggle against the newly formed Galactic Empire. For others, it was out of admiration for the Jedi Order after their failed attempt to survive the corrupt Emperor's power struggle. Now you might be saying, hang on a minute, didn't the galaxy hate the Jedi after Order 66? Palpatine put out so much propaganda, framing Grandmaster Yoda, Master Windu, and others as traitors. Well, this is true, but there was a shift. Let me explain. In both the expanded universe and in canon, in the wake of Order 66, the Jedi were increasingly reviled and despised, but as the years waned on, and by 5 BBY, there were simultaneously growing factions and movements of young politicians, idealists, activists, who began to see the cracks in the imperial narrative. The pivotal turning point for this was the Public Order Resentencing Directive, or the PORD. Harsher punishments, full authoritarianism. And as I'm going to explain a bit later in the video, something that's been set up in Andor Season 1, and also as we see in canon source material, there is a fascination in the galaxy in the years that Andor takes place, with the old days of the Republic. Suddenly the narrative changed, and as I'm going to explain just a bit later, Mon Mothma might jump on this trend. So later in the timeline when the Alliance formed, as is in the name, it was to restore the Republic, the one we saw fall in the prequels. In its very name, we get a hint of why they may have seen the Jedi as heroic and a positive force for good. The Jedi used to work alongside the Republic, and many of its top brass members like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa had close friendships with the Jedi before they fell, and remembered when they were guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, not the twisted reputation imposed on them by Darth Sidious. And many remember a time when people used to say "May the Force be with you" as a sort of superstitious phrase, wishing someone good luck. The Revenge of the Sith novelization points this out, and how the likes of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker brought hope and inspiration to families across the galaxy, to the point where many adopted the saying out of respect for the good work the Jedi were doing against the Separatists. So to put it simply, the Alliance was trying to keep the old traditions alive. And this connects to Andor Season 2 in a pretty important way. This is the one and only Force-related concept I hope Tony Gilroy explores. At what point did the Rebels begin using the phrase? We don't hear it a single time in Andor Season 1, but we do by the time of Rogue One, and so by the end of Season 2. And as the second season is going to continue to explore galactic politics, and the point at which Mon Mothma leaves the Imperial Senate to form the rebellion, we will no doubt see some more of the inner workings of the Alliance, including some of their earliest values. And to go even deeper with this, I recently stumbled into a theory which could explain the logistics of this switch, why the rebellion decided to systematically adopt it. As we know, the Empire didn't like worlds who had their own traditions and cultures. They often oppressed them and persecuted them, destroying those who resisted Imperial reign, as is the case with Ferrix and Aldhani in Season 1. We observe the endeavour of a rigorously secular empire to withstand and impede all cultural identity in favour of conformity to the ways of the Empire, and this is juxtaposed with the resilient response of individuals who staunchly cling onto their heritage. As this continues, and as the Empire expands its reach, so do anti-imperial insurgents and growing rebel cells, who may have taken notice of this pattern, and so, as a universal unifier, they may have brought back the phrase, "May the Force be with you," the ultimate middle finger to the Empire. And what I think is going to happen is that Mon Mothma might lean into this aspect of the old Jedi religion as a populist unifier. Andor Season 1 was trying to show us this kind of phenomenon is evident. On Coruscant, for example, the young Chandrillans, including Mon's daughter, have a fervent reverence for the old ways, not the new. Mon, and even Bail Organa, might choose the phrase "May the Force be with you" to expand the reach of rebel sentiment, casting the widest net possible, beyond just partisans and extremists. Tony Gilroy noted, for the average citizen of the galaxy, unknowingly joining the rebel side in terms of personal philosophy begins at home, being sick and tired of personal repercussions of the Empire's tyranny, be it intolerance, employment, repression of being able to practice their traditions. To my mind, "May the Force be with you" was a phrase that embodied the antidote to oppression. It was a phrase of hope, and reminds those in the galaxy of better days, at least those against the Empire. There were plenty for, but the next stage is synthesizing loss of faith with a promising ideology, which Nemec teases in his manifesto. The inevitability of revolution, the natural course that brings about freedom, the notion of the good old days, the ways of old, uniting people of various worlds. On Ferrix it was through the chant "Stone and Sky," and of course Maarva's speech, where she placed her people's emotions by reminding them of their united cultural identity. She says, "We had our work, we had our days, and they left us alone. We left the trade lanes open, and they left us alone. We had each other. We had Ferrix. If I could do it all again, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start." The framing here is that our traditions and our ancestors are a natural, and that's the key word here, natural, part of our identity and the shaping of history. By contrast, the Empire is unnatural, a disease, and as Nemec states, the imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. The frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. The Empire hated the Jedi. Its formation was dependent on the Order's destruction. So what better small act of unity and insurrection than to revive a phrase that means hope for so many in the galaxy, and yet disorder, chaos, and lack of compliance for the Empire? It's perfect. As you can see, Andor has already been setting the stage for this transition. In Season 1, the inclusion of the Kawati signet to many is just a really cool Easter egg, but did you know that specific crystals symbolized and celebrated overthrowing Rakatan invaders millennia ago? It is often said that Andor is the one series that should not do anything Force-related, and to a large extent I agree. Tony Gilroy says he doesn't want what he calls the royal family of Star Wars, Skywalkers, famous characters, or limiting cameos where possible, but this is the one exception, because it is necessary to demonstrate some of those early inner workings of the Rebel Alliance, when the rebels began adopting this iconic phrase. I think it's really awesome, but what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.